Well, hey guys, this is Dr. Drake 63 here today, and what you see before you are two rifles and two pistols. You might be saying to yourself, what do you mean? I only see one pistol. Well, let's talk about that. What you see here is a rifle. It's a 5.56, and it has a 16-inch barrel. And because it has a 16-inch barrel, this is classified as a rifle. What you see right here is also a rifle because even though the barrel length is less than 16 inches, in fact, without that muzzle device, it's at 8.5 inches, it has been tax stamped. So this is a registered short-barreled rifle, or SBR, which you do via the Form 1. What you see right here is a pistol. I think most of you guys would be hard-pressed not to get that one right. The one right above it is a pistol too. What makes this a pistol? Well, the barrel is only about 10 inches, 10.5 inches long. However, because this stock has been welded in a closed position and cannot be extended, it is classified as a pistol per the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Now, you see a lot of what used to be classified as short-barreled rifles nowadays can have an extendable rubber instead of this being hard polymer stock. It's classified as a brace. It does everything exactly the same that this stock does, and you can even shoulder it per ATF opinion. And you do not need to register this. You do not need to pay a tax stamp and go through additional background checks, any of that. Now, question for the group, is that a silly rule or not? Here's my thought. This rifle right here is going to function the exact same whether or not it's got what's classified as a brace, which is basically this made out of different material. This right here is classified, both of these are pistols. Now, let me ask you the question. Does this gun function any differently whether or not it's got a soft rubber classified as a brace or a stock? The answer is obviously no. Can this on top, this PPS 43C, can it function exactly the same as if it were a rifle? And the answer is yes, it functions exactly the same. It shoots the same ammo, it's the same velocity coming out of the barrel, everything is the same. And you can put a sling on this and get some stabilization simply by putting forward as opposed to backwards resistance while you're shooting it. But it's still a pistol. Look, I can put forward tension against this sling, and I've got a stable platform from which to shoot. Now, if I were to take this upper off, which I clearly wouldn't, guys, and put it on top of this receiver, I now have what is considered by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms to be an illegal SBR. That's the difference. That's the only difference. So there's not a lot of difference in functionality here at all. Now, I've seen where you can take a pistol like this, especially with the Browning high powers, and put a stock on it. Not my cup of tea, but I have to admit it is kind of cool looking in that configuration, and so that you can brace it against your shoulder. And if you do that, you have to get permission from the government and pay a $200 tax stamp. And this handgun will function exactly the same. Same ammo, same rate of fire, same everything. This guy right here needs some modifications, and you need to get permission to do that. Later in this video, I'm going to show you one that I borrowed from a local gun store that I work with that is a legal SBR. And you'll see that all else is the same. It functions the same. There's no difference other than you can shoulder it. Now, these laws were put into effect back in the 30s. You had a lot of gangster activity. You had a lot of sawed-off shotguns, things that were easy to conceal. Now, I don't agree with the decision to make those regulated, but they did. Those are the laws, and we have to follow them. But my question is if this were to have a brace on it instead of this stock, is that not just as easily to conceal as it is in a registered SBR configuration? And I won't even get into the whole concept that criminals don't pay any attention to those laws anyway. So, interesting concept. We're going to talk about SBRs a little bit today. And this is just a little bit of a primer, but it's important to know your rules and regulations so you don't get yourself out of compliance. Stay tuned. Now, I mentioned that I borrowed a fully licensed legal SBR, same version of this PPS 43, only this one has had some modifications which really only involve allowing this spring mechanism to work properly. And when I get around to SBRing mine, I'll show you how that's done. But you do need permission to do that. It's very important that you follow rules and regulations, otherwise you could end up in some hot water. But the only difference here is I have the ability now where I can take this stock and extend it just like that. And this is a spring-loaded button that allows you to close it. And that's it. So now, basically what I have here is a legal SBR, and I can shoulder this, as you can see now, which is going to allow you to shoot it more accurately. There's no question about it. But there's no difference in functionality in the gun itself. So, bottom line here is, without any other change other than that stock being able to swing back, you've got the exact same firearm. It performs the same function. So I don't make these laws. I don't understand a great many of them. Maybe some of them are outdated, but they exist. And if you're going to go ahead and want to play in the space of modifying a weapon, you need to get permission to do that. And the Form 1 process is pretty simple, albeit lengthy and complicated, but you need to supply fingerprints. You need to get permission from your local jurisdiction. You have to also make sure that you have your state laws in order. And then you send that information along with a check for $200 to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. They run an additional check on you. Keep in mind you've already had a background check in order to purchase the rifle. Well, they're going to run another one on you. They're going to process it, and anywhere from 3 months to a year, just depending. That 300 blackout that I showed you earlier, that particular one, that process took the better part of 8 months from sending in the paperwork to getting the approval. And you have to do it every single time. Now, there's ways that if you belong to part of a trust that you can expedite the process, you can e-file, there's other things. But either way, you're going to pay that $200. And now, instead of this in a pistol configuration, if you SBR this, now you're in a situation where if you want to cross state lines, you have to get prior permission, and it becomes highly regulated in many states, all because of that. That's the only difference between this and the pistol version that I showed you earlier. I'm not going to make a lot of personal comments on that. You guys can be the judge what you think about that. But if you ask me, it's a lot of minutia that one has to go through, and I don't think that anyone was prevented from being harmed in the process. Why is that? Well, number one, as I mentioned, the firearm's functionality is exactly the same. It's not like we've turned it into full auto or done anything like that. And secondly, if someone has it in their mind that they're going to use a firearm to commit violence against another person, guess what? They probably don't care about legalities in terms of the firearm itself. I mean, think about it. If you're going to break the thou shalt not kill commandment, if you're going to break that law and murder somebody in the U.S., chances are you really don't care about what consequences come from having an illegally configured firearm. So there is that. So what does it take to turn something like a PPS 43 pistol into a legal short-barreled rifle? Well, you have to get some parts, and the only way you can really do that is by getting something such as a demilled parts kit, which is what you see before you, and we're going to talk about some of those parts. We'll take a look at that. So first up, you get 3 mags. These all seem to be in good working order and not bad. You're gonna pay 20 something a piece just for these, and these are double stack for 7.62 by 25, and they hold 35 rounds. And then you get some cut up receiver parts. This is the topper receiver, and this is your rear sight. Now, don't know. I don't need a new rear sight, but I guess I have one if I want to fool around with all that. But it's the rear sight, 200-yard setting, which might be a little bit on the generous side. And here's your 100-yard, or I'm sorry, that's your 200, and that's your 100. That might be a little bit on the generous side for the round, 100 certainly. But anyway, you can see they didn't take too much care when they torched this sucker apart. You also get the very end of the barrel shroud. This contains the front post, which is adjustable, and also you can drift it like so. So that's kind of a nice thing to have. I know my PP343C shoots a little bit to the left, so I've got some work to do with that at some point. But there are parts here worth hanging on to. Here's your mainspring, and it's usable except for this buffer on the back. That's pretty beat up. And at some point, they make these out of some kind of particle board or something that's pretty cheap. I could see that being a piece that I replace sometime with some rubber. But the spring itself and the rod are all usable. The bolt, on the other hand, it's not the same bolt anyway. It's not going to fit. This is a full auto bolt. And this particular one has a firing pin, but it doesn't have the other piece of the firing pin. That's been taken out. And not really sure how that one goes together compared to the semi-auto version. You should be able to just drift a pin out, but this has a different makeup, but that's not a usable part at all. This is kind of interesting. This is a cleaning rod, and also this serves as an adjustment tool for that front sight. So that kind of comes in handy. But just overall, this is what you get. This piece is where the barrel is presses in. And I don't really know what use you'd have for that, but they included it. And this piece right here is your extending rear stock. So if I come to the point where I get my SBR Form 1 back, I can do a conversion with this that involves taking this, basically just this piece right here that's spring loaded, and that allows this to fold up. So there's a little bit more to it than that, but it's not overly complicated. But you got to have the right paperwork to do it. You get a sling, which I did some shopping. That's about a $15 to $20 item. And you get a 3-cell mag pouch, which is brand new. Seems to be in good shape. I'm not a big, full military garb kind of guy, but this is nice. This is very nice. I would tell you though that this kind of needs to all go away for who knows how long until I get the right paperwork so that I can do an SBR conversion. But it's nice to have some spare parts. I've got an extra set of grips. I've got an extra spring for this latch, which closes or allows you to flip open your top part of your receiver. It does have the safety that you see there, the mag well, and so, you know, just in terms of parts, not bad. For the price of getting those 3 mags and a sling, I get all this stuff as well. And who knows, from a spare parts perspective, how we'll use this with the PPS 43. But interesting stuff, and I thought I'd show it to you today. The other thing to look at, too, is look at the overall length of the legal SBR on top and the pistol on the bottom. If you discount this muzzle device right here, you'll actually see with the end of the barrel on this PPS being right about here, this is actually slightly longer than this pistol, but not a big difference. And then, of course, the overall length with the stock extended, as you can see now, you have maybe about 2.5 inches more length, and that's about it. So, in my opinion, they may be silly laws, but we have to pay attention to them. I suggest that you do your homework. You go to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms website. You will get all the information you need. Follow it. That's my advice. Follow it. But this is Dr. Drake 63. I want to thank you for joining me today for this short little primer on differences between an SBR and a pistol. Why it's important, because it can come with jail time, which nobody wants, and stiff fines. There's also laws about altering or making specific changes to a firearm that you need to know as well. But in the case of this right here, the difference between this and the version I showed you with the extendable stock was simply basically a spring being enabled to go down. In other words, so that right here, this little bar that prevents the arm from swinging back isn't welded into place or peened into place. And that's the difference, guys. That's the only difference. This is Dr. Drake 63. I want to thank you for watching today, and as always, carry on.